What's up guys, it's Chase, and today I am super pumped to talk about a topic that I have been thinking about a lot recently, especially on a trip that we just got back from. We went over to Spain for almost a month and we were able to bike across the entire country on the Camino de Santiago and then explore around the southern coast. And it was awesome. It was a trip that we'd been dreaming of for a long time, and we're super pumped to be able to do it. And so on that trip, I thought a lot about just how fortunate we are to have that kind of an opportunity, but then also just how some of the decision making that we've put a lot of intention into in the last few years has enabled us to, while just being normal people working normal full-time jobs, to explore what seems like a little bit more often than many of those people around us or that we see. And so I wanted to share just some of the tips that we have used to help guide our own decision making and make it something that is possible, but then when we return, we are not financially off track for our future, because obviously we have to plan for that as well. And I know many of you guys are in the same boat where you want to explore, you want to travel, but you don't want to make poor financial decisions. And so hopefully this at least inspires you to get out and do a little bit more, and hopefully it also helps you to stretch your dollar while you're doing it. The first big thing is just really focusing in on what the priority of the adventure or the trip is. So I know a lot of people, they kind of use it as a location base where it's just like, I just want to go to this thing. And so they look at, we're going to go to Italy, and all of these decisions trickle down from there, and they're just kind of set in stone. There's no ability to change things once you've decided on location. But I think that many of us, we don't just look at the place and say, we want to go to that place. We're thinking we want to go to experience this thing at this place that we can't experience here. And so it's coming up with, what is the priority experience that you're going to have? Is it, like for our last trip, is it biking across, an area? Is it going to see do a certain hike? Is it go camp in a certain area? Whatever it is, identifying the priority and realizing that that is the priority. And so all of the following decisions need to be made with recognition that a successful trip would mean that number one priority is accomplished, and the remainder might have to be, where they are, which is not a priority. Okay, so the second major thing that you have to think about is your method of travel. And so while sometimes there's very limited optionality, there's other times where there's a lot of optionality, and so you might be able to consider different forms of public transit, whether you fly, whether you drive, and just how that's going to impact the overall cost of the trip. One mistake that it seems like a lot of people make is that they think, okay, I'm gonna drive there because it's, way cheaper. The flight's $200, I can drive there for $100 in gas, but then they completely neglect the time that they're going to be losing in transit. They're neglecting all the wear and tear on their vehicle, things like that. And so just considering and prioritizing, the most efficient method of travel is really important. And if you're going to be driving, one thing you can do to help budget what that's going to look like for yourself is to just use the standard IRS mileage rate that they use for tax purposes. And I think this year it's 65 cents per mile. And so while that might seem really high if you're just calculating just for gas alone, it's probably more accurate than what your gas calculation is when you look at the big picture, when you account for all the different maintenance, the tires, everything else that goes on with your vehicle. So putting that in second, and knowing that there's a lot of different options. One site that I like to use when considering that is Rome to Rio. It's a website you can go plug in your start location, your end location, kind of just like your mapping software, and it'll generate all sorts of different options using public transit, flights, things like that. And then from there you can make a decision, stem out, and buy on whatever site that you decide to buy on. And when it comes to flying, this might be obvious, but if you can do anything to avoid checking a bag, do it. Just bring a carry-on. A lot of airlines will let you bring like a backpacking style backpack on. And if you can fit everything in that, it simplifies the process so much, and you save a lot of money, because a lot of times you have to pay for the checked bags, and then the logistics can be a pain in the butt too, because everybody knows luggage gets lost, especially when you have multi-leg flights. And so it just simplifies everything. And if it's a decision of leaving something behind, you might save enough money just in checking the bag alone that you can buy whatever item it is, another shirt when you're in your new location, and call it a souvenir and still come out at a net positive. Okay, this next one is another big one, and that is food. I know a lot of people are really into food. I think, we all love food, but some people especially like to splurge on this. And so if this is a priority, then place that at the top and know you're gonna have to sacrifice on the adventures or whatever else it is. But if food is realized for, what it is, which is fuel to get you through whatever this adventure is, you can be strategic to help save money in some places, spend it in others, and stretch the dollar throughout the trip a little bit longer. And so a few of the ways you can do that, the obvious one to start out with is just pack food when you leave home. Do not buy food in the airports. Do not put yourself in a position where you have nothing but a crappy $20 cheeseburger available to you in the hotel or in the airport or whatever it is. So pack a bunch of fresh food. I've done this so much. TSA loves to tear apart my bag and find all my burritos and whatever else it is. But the reality is, you just save so much money right off the bat. And then when you get to wherever you're going, find a grocery store early, go stock up, and just have some sort of stock always, available in your backpack, in your room, wherever you're staying, so that you don't put yourself in a spot where you're starving and you just pick the closest option that's super expensive, and then your, budget just gets absolutely blown out. Now, I'm not saying that you don't need to plan to eat out, but if you eat out, one meal a day, it can be significantly cheaper than going all 3 meals. And then another little tip that can be helpful is packing like freeze-dried meals. So if you haven't had them, a lot of backpackers use them. They're like a dehydrated food. Add water, boiling water, let them sit for a little bit. They rehydrate, and some of them are really, really good. I really like Peak Refuel as a brand. I've eaten them, a ton. Like we've eaten them at home before when we're in a pinch and we just need some food. But if you pack some of those, they're good. They keep for years and years and years. And then if you find yourself in a pinch, open it up, throw some hot water in it. A lot of, even gas stations, you can just go in like on their coffee machines, they'll have a hot water spigot. You can fill it up, and then you actually get some good quality food, a lot of calories, and while they may seem expensive when you're comparing it to grocery store food, they're definitely still way cheaper and nutritionally better for you than some of the options you might find while you're traveling. Okay, the next tip is to consider renting things. So when it comes to doing different activities on trips, and again, I'm gonna look at our trip to Spain, our intent was to go there and ride bikes across the country. And so we have bikes at home, we ride them a lot and we love them, and we were initially planning to bring them with us. But when I started calculating all the potential costs associated, from the airlines charging, these fees that they like to spring on you, to the potential for damage, to just the logistical challenge once you get there and you're going between bus and train and wherever you are, and not knowing exactly what the capacity is on those different methods of travel, we ended up deciding that it would just be more cost effective and certainly less of a headache to just rent. And so we rented bikes. They were delivered to the start point. We unboxed them, straightened the handlebars, put the bags on them, rode them for 2 weeks, and then boxed them, or no, we didn't even box them back up. We brought them to a shipping location. There was a prepaid label already that we had, sent them back, and it was super easy. And so that was just one example, but others might be, even if it is something more local, but you don't already have the equipment, it might be more efficient just to go rent it for the day. You don't have to worry about storing it. You don't have to worry about caring for it, replacing it if it gets damaged or just goes out of date. And renting from people can usually be a really, really good way to get some local intel wherever you're going. And so a lot of times it'll end up being like a little bit of a mentorship of sorts, along with getting the equipment that you can use, and then at the end of the day, give back. And then another realm that renting things can be effective is with vehicles. So surprisingly, if you are gonna do a long trip and you just don't have the right vehicle for the job, say you have a big work truck that you use for your day-to-day life, but the idea of driving it across country is super expensive and maybe unappealing, you can think about renting a little car, or vice versa. If you have a little car and you're going to do a trip that you're going to bring a motorcycle with you, then maybe you rent a truck. And sometimes the actual bottom line can be a net positive, because the expense of these cheaper rental cars might save money. And again, it's usually best to calculate if you know the exact cost of your vehicle for all the fuel, maintenance, everything, use that. Otherwise, just do the IRS number. And if there's a significant difference, renting might be a good option for the vehicle as well. Another big one is to find ways to reduce your own fixed expenses through trades and bartering. So that can be on 2 different fronts. One, it can be on the home front. So in the past, Sadie and I, when we've left on a longer trip, we've realized that the expenses associated with our house at home don't go away when we leave. And so you just have those on top of the money that you're spending in your new location while you're traveling. And so we've actually used Airbnb, where we set up our house. It takes a lot of extra work, and it's certainly a little bit of a sacrifice, but if you set it up right, you get it up on Airbnb and you get some people to rent it while you're gone, you can help to offset some of those costs. And if you do it really well, I've even heard of people coming out in a net positive where their house makes more money than they spend on their vacation because they're so efficient, and they come back and financially they're in the exact same spot or even better than when they left. And so that's definitely an option. Or if you are able to plan ahead and say you have some sort of creative outlet, like myself, I do video, Sadie does photo stuff, other people, might do writing, whatever it is, people will find a way to trade and barter to lower the expenses when it comes to these adventures that they're on, whether it's the lodging or the activities. There's just ways that you can reach out and see if you have some skill that might be able to benefit them in a way that they're willing to reduce the cost for you to do that thing, or maybe even sometimes completely eliminate it, which once again just extends that horizon and makes your budget go even further. And all of this stuff is on my website. I have a website called roadtoridge.com, and I just share all sorts of stuff just like this around outdoor adventure, car camping, things like that. So if you want to check out any of the links, go into the description below and it'll lead you over there. But overall, I just wanted to say, those tips aside, you have to just learn how to decouple expectations on these trips. So instead of saying, again, I'm going to go to Italy and I'm going to enjoy myself while I'm there, which means I'm going to eat out every meal, I'm going to stay in a nice hotel, I'm going to do all this stuff. Just try to be more reasonable, more logical, and take the thing that you actually care the most about, prioritize that, and take the rest, and realize that these are just necessary, not evils, but they're just necessary components of the trip that you need to check the box. A place to sleep is a place to sleep. Food to eat is food to eat, and do it in a way that's strategic, where you can maintain a long-term focus, have your financial situation be, not destroyed when you're gone. And then when you come back, you know that, hey, there's a potential for another trip right around the corner, because we were, so creative with this one that we have time, money, and availability to do it again here in a couple months, or, whenever it is, rather than a couple of years out. If you have any other tips, please leave them down below. I'm just starting on this journey, and I'm sure there's a lot of other good information out there. And as always, thanks for following along. Hit the like button and subscribe. I've never said this before, but people say it helps, so please do, and I will keep making stuff like this.